This is a More Than Just Podcast production.
Welcome to Spotcast Season 7, Episode 17. My name is Temporal. I am in Toronto, Ontario, and I'm joined by Jonathan Kuline in Jacksontown, New Brunswick.
Hello there, kids.
And we're also joined by Jaime Lopez Jr. in Seattle, Washington.
How's it going?
Well, it's going well. Cool. No fact check again. I don't understand. I don't believe that for a minute.
We're so good at what we do. It's just unavoidable how good we are.
I swear there has to be facts that should have been checked. But
that just means that Jonathan didn't have a chance to listen to the last week's episode yet.
Yeah, I didn't. I'd listened to it, but I didn't do anything about it. So there we go. All right. Well, we have some amazing news. Well, I don't know. I'm trying to think now. So this is from FeedSpot. I got an email from the founder telling us that we are number 12 of the top 40 sci-fi podcasts.
Woo! Woohoo!
Yeah. So now I vaguely remember we were somewhere on some lists in the past. I can't remember now. Can you guys remember?
I do remember we've gotten this before, and I don't remember us being this high before. But
no, yeah.
So thank you, listeners. We're very grateful that you are.
Yeah, we don't know how it happened, but yeah. Mm-hmm.
I think it might be the fact that we've been pretty consistent the last little while. We've been putting out lots of episodes and talking about a wide variety of things. But either way, thanks for listening.
Yeah, I think the last list we were on was a Star Trek podcast list.
Yeah.
And we weren't that high either, but because there are so many Star Trek podcasts out there, right?
Yeah.
But yeah, this is sci-fi, so we're in there among them, as they would say.
Good for us,
as the Apollo astronauts would say, landing near the mountains in Apollo 17, I think.
We'll try and live up to that measure by talking about some Trek and some Silo and some Severance and some Star Wars and just cover all our bases this week.
Well, why don't you dive into your first story here for the headlines?
Yeah, so here, our first thing from the headlines today is that the 2025 Oscar nominations that were delayed due to the LA wildfires, they were announced this morning, so we finally know who's on all the short lists. There were definitely some surprises. There were definitely some snubs. We'll go through the lists of a few of the categories that hit us most interestingly. So two things, or maybe three, I would say, that are sort of in our worlds that made the Best Picture list. We got Dune Part 2 in here. We got The Substance in here, and we got Wicked in here. That all sort of fall under the sci-fi, umbrella. I can't say I feel confident that any of those has a shot in hell of winning, but always nice to get noticed. We're going to jump really into the snubs quickly because for Best Director, neither the director of Wicked nor the director of Dune was nominated for Best Director, which basically means there's very little shot that either of those are going to be the winner inevitably. The director of The Substance did get nominated. That's Coralie Farragut, which is great because she's the only woman who got nominated.
Right.
I'm just going to do a quick tangent and say, I think it is a real shame that over the course of the year that the esteem in which Dune 2 was held didn't resonate and didn't carry over. Because I think you can quibble with it. I didn't like the fact that it was like a part 1 of 2. It changed things up. But Villeneuve is an incredible filmmaker, and it is a towering achievement to have told that complicated story that well. And I think it's really kind of disrespectful that after achieving what he did with those 2 movies, they didn't even nominate him for Best Director. I think that is an absolute disgusting travesty.
Was he in the last time when the first part of Dune came out?
He was. It was nominated for Best Picture, and I think he was nominated for Best Director, and he didn't win. And there was a bit of a thought of, well, maybe they'll get him on the flip side. Now, there's a few people have speculated. I've seen some online chatter. Well, maybe they're waiting for the third part because that's going to be his culminating piece. But the third part, I mean, Tim, you know the book better than I do, is a weirder than these two kind of thing. I don't think they could do the Peter Jackson "we'll get you on the third one" kind of thing, because it's not as clear or good of a story.
I was gonna say the last time we had like a sci-fi or fantasy film win would have been Lord of the Rings, right? Or the third one, right? The Return of the King?
Yeah.
Did that win?
It did. And honestly, I don't think it was the best of the movies. I think they were like patting him on the back and saying, good job. I think Two Towers is a better movie.
Yeah, but that's true. But it's been a long time. I can't think of another sci-fi movie that's won an Oscar.
I don't think there is another sci-fi movie depends on your definition of sci-fi, but I don't think there is another one that's ever won. They even just getting a nomination prior to their expanding the Best Picture category from 5 to 10, it was almost impossible for a sci-fi movie to get in. Like Star Wars got nominated in 1977. There's been a handful of what we'd call sci-fi or fantasy movies that have been, but like very rarely. And then it was The Dark Knight that was the tipping point for why they decided to go to 10, because it didn't get nominated initially, and people were like, what the heck? It was a great movie. It was tremendous performances. Why wasn't this on the list? So that's when they decided, we'll do twice as many. Just so they can, again, it's so they can say, Wicked nominated for an Oscar. The Substance nominated for an Oscar. Dune Part 2 nominated for an Oscar. Like, yeah, cool, but it's kind of cheating. I'll just rip through this. Nothing really in our world for Best Actor. Nothing. Best Actress, Cynthia Erivo. That one's really interesting. So she's obviously the star of Wicked. That one would be interesting because she, if she wins, she'd be the youngest person to ever win an EGOT, the Emmy, Grammy, Oscar, and Tony, which is kind of neat. But I don't think she would be the favorite in this category. The other person who's up for it is Demi Moore for The Substance. She won the Golden Globe, and there is a little bit of a maybe she could win vibe, although a lot of other people think that Mikey Madsen, who was the star of the film Anora, will probably win. Best Supporting Actor, nothing in our world. Best Supporting Actress, Ariana Grande got nominated, but we didn't get any nomination for Margaret Qualley from The Substance, which a lot of people were kind of expecting, so that's kind of a bit of a snub. Screenplay, unfortunately, also not really in our world, so that's disappointing. Both. Best original screenplay, The Substance got nominated. That's true. Animated feature is kind of a cool category. Flow is a movie that people were really excited about. I watched the trailer for it and I really want to watch it, but it's still a little pricey, so I'm hoping it'll be affordable before the show. But that, Inside Out 2, Memoir of a Snail, The Wild Robot, and Wallace and Gromit: Vengeance Most Foul. So those are all cool movies.
Yeah, Flow won the Golden Globe, right?
Yeah. And then you have to get into the more technical awards to get into the stuff that is sort of our world. So, Wicked is nominated for Best Film Editing, Best Cinematography. Dune and Nosferatu are also on that list. Production Design, Dune, also there. Wicked, and there's Costume Design, Nosferatu and Wicked are in there. Best Makeup and Hairstyling, Nosferatu, The Substance, and Wicked are all in there. Not, I would say, a banner year. Visual effects, I suppose, is really our world, and sound. So sound, Dune was up for it, Wicked's up for it, Wild Robot is up for it, which is really cool because that's an animated picture. Visual effects, Alien Romulus, Dune Part 2, Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes, and Wicked. So that kind of speaks to the quality of those. And then after that, it's just a lot of other categories that are sort of not our world. But yeah, it's. I think this is very much part of the conversation you two had when I was traveling, which is that the caliber of films this past year was not at the highest level, probably resulting from the strikes and all the stuff that happened the year before. So I wouldn't say this is a knock your socks off year. And I don't think there's a clear favorite in a lot of these categories because it's really hard to kind of say, oh my gosh, there's no Oppenheimer in here. There's no, no tremendous standout. Oh my gosh, that is an all-timer. We're going to look back at this, years from now and talk about the quality of 2024 as a film year.
In our genre anyway. Yeah. Sure.
I mean, across the board, I don't even think that has anything to do with our genre. It's just, I don't think it was a particularly knock your socks off movie here. Are you surprised by any of these, Jaime? Or are you excited by any of these? Do you feel strongly about any of these?
Yeah, I think it's kind of stark how I feel really bad because I know a lot of people work really hard on this stuff, but it feels like it's going to be a real down year for, let's say, like the ratings on this, because people are going to look at this and say, all right, Anora, what's that about? No idea. The Brutalist, I only know because now that it won the Golden Globe, it's like, oh, now I'm starting to see ads for that. But like nobody knew what that was. A Complete Unknown, at least that one had ads, right? Like the Timothée Chalamet factor is real strong. Yeah. The Bob Dylan factor is strong. Conclave, I think people would be like, what is that? Oh, yeah, that's right. Ray Fiennes is in some sort of religious movie.
Yay.
Yeah. Dune is like, oh, look, this like one people can actually know about. Emilia Perez, nobody knew about this until the Golden Globes. I guarantee you, nobody had a clue. Again, this isn't to say that it's like a bad film or anything. It's just this isn't going to get people excited. I'm still here. I have no idea who's in it or what's it's about. Nickel Boys, again, no idea. The Substance, I only know because of the Golden Globes. That's the Demi Moore movie. And Wicked is like, oh, here's another one that people know. So this list really could just be like Dune Part 2 and Wicked.
Yep.
Well, I'm predicting the Brutalist will win, and I'm thinking that Adrian Brody will win for Best Actor for the Brutalist because it is. I haven't seen it yet, but it's definitely on my list of things I want to see. Mm-hmm. And I'm kind of and no, I mean I don't know why it's like Adrian Brody is the Meryl Streep of Best Actor. Like he just runs away with it, right? He's like that other guy, Daniel Day-Lewis. You cannot compete with them. But the thing about my one thing about Adrian Brody though is I think he's the same in every movie I've ever seen. He plays different roles, but same performance, right?
He doesn't, I think, immerse in the role as much as Meryl Streep does. Like she makes herself invisible, and you kind of forget. He still has a little bit more of himself in his roles, but I do think he's an exceptional actor.
Yeah, no, I mean, he is up there in sort of the top tier of actors, right? The one thing that we should probably point out is that, where is it? Carla Sofia Garcon is the first out trans actor to be nominated for Best Actress.
Yes, you're absolutely right, Tim. Good call. Yeah.
Yeah. And then I want to circle back on the Best Picture sci-fi thing. So it depends on your definition of science fiction. Like we're calling Lord of the Rings in our milieu, right? But so I found a list online of nominated movies, but spoilers, none of these won. Starting in 1971, Clockwork Orange, Star Wars, as you mentioned already, E.T. the Extraterrestrial, 1982, Avatar in 2009, and District 9 as well was in 2009, Inception 2010, Gravity 2013, and Her, which is the AI one. Yeah. Mad Max Fury Road and The Martian were both 2015. The Arrival movie, another Denis Villeneuve, was 2016, and that's one of my favorite movies. Black Panther 2018, which was like, if there was a box office like category, they would have won that for sure. Dune, which we talked about already, 2021, and Avatar and Everything Everywhere All at Once. Wait a minute, didn't that win something?
Everything Everywhere All at Once won. I guess it depends where you fall on that one. It could be described as a science fiction movie, but it's really kind of a relationship movie.
I guess, but I call it sci-fi. I just thought it was an amazing movie. So that one did win an Oscar?
It won Best Picture. Yeah.
Okay, well, so that's the only one that we've ever, none of the Avatars or whatever, but have won. But
yep.
Oh well. But you'll notice that the Lord of the Rings movies weren't on this list compiled by who's this people? IGN. So
yeah,
who we quote a lot.
Yep. Well, the flip side of the Oscars is the Golden Raspberries, or the Razzies, if you will, which were also announced this week. And, well, let's just say it's everything you would have expected and more. So the nominees for
this podcast, yeah.
Yeah. If you've been listening to us talk for the last year, you'll know that some of these things belong on here. Worst Picture of the Year, or the nominees are Borderlands, Joker Folie à Deux, Madam Web, Megalopolis, and Regan. I don't know what Regan is.
Regan.
It's the Regan. It's the biopic thing. Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Let's see. Worst actor: Jack Black, Zachary Levi, Joaquin Phoenix, Dennis Quaid, and Jerry Seinfeld. So, again, movies you'd expect: Dear Santa, Harold and the Purple Crayon, Joker Folie à Deux, Reagan, and Unfrosted. Yeah, okay, checks out. I'm not surprised by any of these, given the ratings / public discourse about these things. Craven the Hunter's on this list. The Crow remake is on here. Again, all the stuff you'd expect to find in a list of worst of.
Did the Crow remake already come out? We missed it?
It did, and actually, I have no desire to see it, but I did speak to somebody here who has seen it and said it was just an offense to anyone who enjoys the first one and or the book. So, I think that summed up what I felt about them even making it. But it's of these movies, mercifully, and again, your donations, if you want to torture Jonathan on this podcast, are always welcome. I'm happy to take one for the team. I have seen Madam Web. It is really terrible. I really look forward in a way to watching things like Borderland and Megalopolis because of the reputed badness. I did see Unfrosted. It was not a great movie at all.
It was
but
a Seinfeld episode. Yeah,
it had some moments, just because it's got a killer cast, but it felt like a lot of wasted potential.
Jaime's Jennifer Lopez and Atlas is on here.
Yes, Jaime, you can speak to that one, can't you?
Yeah, it's it's definitely a laundry or dishwashing movie, right? We talked about the
not a sit in front of it for 2 hours kind of movie.
Not requiring focus. Okay, got it.
Yeah, and it's not exactly a role that really would ask much of anyone, and they really didn't. I mean, if you're like, hey, what does Jennifer Lopez look and sound like? Great. Now surround her with robots. There you go. Like you know exactly what you're going to do. You could ask, Chat GPT to generate you an almost exact copy of this movie without you even trying to plagiarize. It's just very, very basic. Very, very much like you know what you're getting in for, right? And I think there's room for that. I feel like we need to have recognition for that sort of thing. It should be a category at any of the Razzies or the Academy Awards or Golden Globes, or a popcorn movie kind of thing. So, yeah.
But I'm not surprised to see Bryce Dallas Howard on here because Argyle it wants to be Romancing the Stone in a sense, right?
Yeah.
But yeah, she's no Kathleen Turner for sure. It needs some portrayal anyway. But
honestly, she has now directed multiple episodes of multiple Star Wars show, and her directing is quite excellent, which again makes sense. Her father obviously is an exceptional director as well. But I think her bona fides as a director are stronger than her ones as an actor now. Maybe it's time to spend more time doing that because
Well, she wasn't too bad in the roles in the Jurassic World 3 series, right? She wasn't too bad in those.
She wasn't
amazing.
Great.
I get it.
She wasn't like a standout, but then I don't think any of those performances in any of those movies was particularly standout.
Yeah, I'm trying to remember who was the actress who went to the Razzies and gave an acceptance speech. Was it Sandra Bullock?
I do remember what you're saying, but I can't recall who it was. Yeah, it's somebody famous who went and was like, I agree, this, and did a whole
thanked them and just blew them away.
yeah, which, good sport.
I mean, it's an award, right?
Yeah, it's a prestigious award.
It's credibility, yeah. Look how bad I am.
Again, Hollywood, especially during award season, sometimes takes itself just a scotch too seriously. So it is what it is. Are you surprised by anything you see here? Jaime, were you like, no, not Atlas, not Joker Folie à Deux?
I did look to see, is there anything where, they're reaching, and I'm like, I don't really think they are. Let me just double check. I was surprised at just the category existing of prequel, remake, ripoff, or sequel.
I like ripoff as a title, yeah.
Yeah, that's a fun one.
I like the any two obnoxious characters role or screen combo.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
The entire cast of Megalopolis. Yeah, Dennis Quaid and Penelope Ann Miller as Ronnie and Nancy. I want to watch that movie now, right?
I imagine that would be an excellent
I'm a Dennis Quaid fan. I really like him. Yeah,
I certainly have enjoyed his work in the past. Although I know that his political views don't align with mine. So,
is it him or Randy? Which one? Randy was the one that was a deal.
Randy
right?
has some mental health issues that
But I mean, gotta remember they gave us Boimler, so
yeah, I guess that's one way to look at it.
You know,
it's one way to look at it. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, well, like your grandmother used to say, nothing is complete, nothing is useless. It can always serve as a horrible example.
Yeah, it does sound like my grandmother.
There's a silver lining somewhere.
Yeah. All right. Well, let's move away from award season and back to some of our sci-fi goodiness. So, a couple of rumors going around this week. One of them a little more solid than the other. There's a story from the Hollywood Reporter that says that Ryan Gosling, Pride of Canada, is in talks to star in Sean Levy's new Star Wars movie. That would be really interesting. Apparently, this movie has been sort of long brewing and not a lot of details on it yet, but it would be really interesting. This one is apparently going to focus away from the whole Star Wars ongoing, never-ending Skywalker love affair and move on to something else. So, yeah, I mean, I think obviously it depends on the role, but he's a big star that might draw in some eyes that wouldn't necessarily go for that kind of thing. So I don't know. What do you guys think about a Ryan Gosling-led Star Wars adventure?
I'm just Ken.
Well, he's undeniably charming. He is, obviously he can play a lot of different range. And, he's an A-lister, which is kind of cool. So, he brings his own audience, which is nice.
Yeah, no, he was in, I watched him in that Stuntman one.
Oh, the Fall Guy, yeah.
Fall Guy, that was good.
Yeah, I mean...
Was that meant to be I wonder if it was meant to be a remake of the TV show.
The closest, yeah, I'm sure it was. The closest thing I guess we've seen from him is Blade Runner. He did the Blade Runner sequel, right? And he was the lead-ish of that.
Yeah.
Obviously, a pretty subdued part. Like, it wasn't like he was,
I liked his performance.
I thought his performance was good too, but it wasn't, I think, necessarily a showcase for his talents. It was he played it very understatedly. It wasn't exactly he was ripping off, huge monologues or anything. It was kind of just a lot of looking into the camera intensely.
Well, you could put Harrison Ford and Blade Runner in that category, in that sort of category too, and you compare him to things like Han Solo or some of the other stuff he did. Those secret agent Doom movies. What are they called?
The Jack Ryan ones. Yeah.
Yeah, Jack Ryan.
Yeah. Well, we'll keep an eye on that one. The other rumor that's going around, and I'm going to say this is extremely rumor, is that they were talking about a few different places are reporting the rumor that Dave Filoni has approached Natalie Portman about reprising her role as Padme in the second season of Ahsoka. This has not been substantiated by any reputable source that I've seen, but it is all over the socials. It is all over the nerd blogs. There hasn't been any confirmation or denial, but that would be really interesting because they're already confirmed that Hayden Christensen is going to come back. They could actually do, as part of Dave Filoni's long-running reclamation project of the prequels, they could do some scenes with Padme and Anakin and Ahsoka obviously had a relationship with Padme. And so it could be interesting if it comes to pass. I don't know if it's true. I don't know if it's going to actually happen, but that would be really interesting to me. What do you guys make of that?
So, but in Ahsoka, isn't Darth Vader already Darth Vader?
Darth Vader's dead in Ahsoka.
Right.
When we saw Vader and we saw Anakin,
he's going to come back as a Force ghost or whatever.
Well, yeah. When she goes into
the
sort
ashtrays?
when she goes into the sort of the world between worlds, she has these visions and stuff like that, right? So it's the same idea. I think it would be her encountering Padme and those kind of worlds.
Yeah, because he came back in when she went to the world between worlds, right?
That's
Wasn't he in there?
Yes. Yeah. There was scenes with both with Hayden Christensen as Anakin and then also later as Darth Vader. So. Yeah. Jaime, would that hype you any more for an Ahsoka season 2 than you already would be?
I think it's a nice addition, but I don't know that it adds a bunch of hype. It's not the same as bringing Hayden Christensen back, right? Like that was pretty special. I know people are going to get in with the somehow Padme returned, but it's not that. I know that joke is easy. Like, just think of it the way that Hayden Christensen showed up in both, flashback type form in Obi-Wan and as Force Ghost, timey-wimey person in Ahsoka, and it works, I think.
Yeah.
Now, granted, I didn't watch all of Clone Wars, so I'm probably missing out. Like, I have seen, I think, Ahsoka interacting with Padme, but I didn't get the impression it was quite as close as the relationship with Anakin, which made sense, right? Because it's her mentor and everything.
Yeah. Yeah. I think, again, I kind of, at this point, have a lot of faith in Dave's storytelling. I wish that his focus wasn't on trying to redeem George's last work. Because so much of what he's been doing has been trying to sort of glue together the prequels and the episodes 7 through 9 so that they actually are redeemed. I think he could probably spend his time differently, but also he tells great stories and he loves his characters and he creates great new characters. And so, maybe you just got to sort of see what he's got in mind. All right. Last up for me, one of my favorite Disney Plus series and also a piece of science fiction was canceled by Disney Plus this week because they suck. The TV show, which I am a big fan of, is called Extraordinary. They did 2 seasons of this. It is
extraordinary. Yes.
It is a both thoughtful and touching and also hilarious and also very prescient story about a young woman who, in a world where everyone has powers, cannot seem to get her powers to work because of some of the baggage that she's carrying around in her head. And it's about her and her friends in the world they live in, where they don't just kind of fit in with all the cool powers and everything else. It's terrific. It is an absolute pleasure of a show to watch. I watch it with my wife. We love it. Tim, I know you're a fan as well. Jaime, I don't know if you've seen it, but it's such a great show. And worst of all is that the second season ends on a pretty major cliffhanger. Right, and so it, unfortunately, they just sort of threw it out with the trash this week. They just announced, like, it's done. We're moving on. In theory, it could, be shopped somewhere else. Although when you read the comments from the showrunner and other people, it sounds like they're all just kind of going off to do other things, which is a real bummer because this show was really exceptional. And to highlight that point, it has 100% right now on Rotten Tomatoes.
Yeah.
It has 100% on 2 seasons of reviews. Now, it didn't get massively reviewed because of just obviously the deluge of content that critics have to review. So it's not, I would say, based on thousands of reviews. It's based on dozens of reviews. But it is terrific. And I am absolutely gutted that we're not going to see at least an opportunity to land this plane. So,
well, I can tell you that 2 out of 3 reviewers on Spotcast would give this 2 thumbs up.
Yeah. I would encourage you to watch it, Jaime, but it won't end well for you.
Stop the podcast, go watch the series, and come back.
Yeah, but that was going to be my question. Like, when you say cliffhanger, is it Mr. Worf fire, kind of cliffhanger? Or is it like, oh, okay, mild cliffhanger? There's
this is a pretty epic cliffhanger. There's an ongoing sort of looping plot device, and it really comes to play at the end of the second season. And you're like, wait, what? And then it ends, and you're like, well, okay, I guess we'll find out in season 3 or never. So... And I feel like, honestly, it's the kind of show where, like, if they just did one more year, that would probably have been fine. Like, I don't think it needed to go on ad infinitum.
Well, maybe they'll do a movie. Who knows?
But I feel like one more season could have landed this plane. And I haven't looked. But my concern with this is that they'll do the same damn thing that they did with Willow. And not only will they cancel it, but that they'll remove it. So,
oh, really?
That is something I am concerned about. Will you guys move on to the next bits of headlines? I'll take a look. But I mean, this is the challenge we face. Obviously, they have access to the numbers. They know how it did or how it didn't do. And we know that critical assessment, even if it's 100%, does not dictate whether or not these shows keep getting made. It probably costs a little bit more than your average show because it does have some special effects and CGI and stuff. But, I mean, I really wish that there would be more shows that would be mindful, more networks that would be mindful, just to say, hey, this show's no longer profitable. You have 2 episodes or 1 movie or something to land this plane and give your audience some closure. But it just doesn't seem like very many places are interested in that, and they just walk away. And that is not very kind to your viewers. And, you know, some of us, we hold grudges. You know, just saying, we hold grudges.
We remember, yeah.
We're aware of who does these things, so don't think we don't think a little harder about this stuff. Yeah, I'm just bummed on this one. It's a terrific show. The cast is delightful. The lead is this young Irish woman whose name I will not say because I'm sure I will not do justice to it. But she is hilarious. The whole cast is great, and
like
yeah,
Madrid or something like that.
Madrid, yeah, that's how it's spelled, but I don't know.
No, but yeah, I heard her say it once on a show.
Yeah,
she's a good interview too. If you ever want to just Google her,
she's a good follow on social too. I mean, she was. I don't know if she still is because, but
yeah.
Yeah.
Alrighty. Well, I have a story here that came out earlier this week, and Nick Mohammed, who you may I believe he played the assistant coach in I believe it was called Ted Lasso, and so he's doing a tour, or he scheduled to do a tour called Show Pony, which is like a live show that he's doing around England, and he was told to postpone a number of episodes. I believe he said something about the show he was on before. I forget what it was, soccer foot something. Can you guys remember what show he was on?
Yes, it had something to do with a guy with a mustache and a coach. Had a little bit of popularity.
A coach going, American football coach going to England or something like that. Yeah. Oh, Ted Lasso. That was what it was. Yeah, Ted Lasso. I believe that's what it was called. Anyway, he didn't really say anything explicit, like in the video, but I believe if you watch the video, you'll get what I'm talking about, right?
Yep. Yeah, there's been a lot of rumors out there that a 4th season might be in the offing, and that the stars are starting to align. I think they were pretty settled. I think Bill Lawrence and what's his name? The star.
That guy, yeah, Jason Sudeikis or something.
Basically, I think they kind of felt like they had told their story, but I think there's such a good feeling around that show that I think the upswell has been, let's see if we can run it back for more. So
is there going to be a scene where they have like a what do you call it, water skiing scene where they have like a ramp and they jump over a shark and stuff?
Well, why would you want to have a show that is like a perfect beginning, middle, and end when you can drag it out for years to come to make more money?
Sure. Yeah. I think that would be an extraordinary thing to do.
Yes.
Bringing it back again. All right. So over to
By the way, Extraordinary is still on Disney Plus here in Canada, at least.
Yay. Yeah. So go watch it now before they cancel it or remove it. So yeah. Jaime, you're up.
Yeah, we mentioned that Sonic the Hedgehog 4 was already greenlit, while the 3 was still in theaters and freshly new in theaters. We now have an official release date, so mark your calendars for March 19th, 2027. According to these nice folks here at The Verge, who are reporting on a Variety post. There you go. We'll just be ready, just be hyped for, again, I was discussing this with my significant other. He's like, what's so important about this? I'm like, look, I'm not going to say like the movies themselves are that great. They're good. They're fine movies. Or that they're beautiful pieces of cinema. This is a story that gets much more interesting when you remember Ugly Sonic and how, you know, the studio nearly just absolutely lost all of its money on doing stupid things until they were, you know, convinced, perhaps bullied by the fan base to take their lumps, delay the release of the movie, spend more money to fix the movie, and it has paid dividends. It should be like, in Harvard Business Review or something, and it should be taught at like, USC's film school of like, this is how you do it correctly. This is how you make the fans happy, and you make the normies, the normal people happy. And you too can have 4 films at the box office.
But it's also a big cast, like you were mentioning last time. They've got Keanu Reeves, they've got Idris Elba and Jim Carrey in there too now, right?
Yeah, it just keeps growing with each one. No end in sight. There's like 20 Sonic characters.
Who's his companion guy? He's pretty famous too. Like,
you mean Tails? Which companion? Who's companion?
No, the human.
Oh, James Marsden.
Yeah. He's not a small actor.
Yeah. Good old. He was in Westworld. He was Cyclops in the X-Men series.
Oh, he was Cyclops,
right? I think he was Cyclops.
Okay. No, it makes sense. I didn't recognize him with that sunglasses on. Good call.
Yeah, he was on Westworld too, right?
Yeah,
that's what we were talking about. Yeah, that's where he kind of was big there. Like, he's not just a small guy. Like, just hanging around. Like, who's the one that hung around with the Chipmunks?
Jason Lee.
From Jason Lee, yeah. Sorry, Jason.
Drive by on Jason, jeez.
I know, eh? Well, I've seen Mallrats, so it's okay. Which he was great in, by the way. I love that character, Brody, right?
Yep.
All right, next story, Hammy.
A few different links here in the show notes for those of you transporting it home. So if you were at Grand Central Terminal about a week ago, right before the release of Severance, the second season of Severance, they did a pop-up, one of those fancy pop-ups. It was like a glass cube, and it's got stuff from the set and like the little office environment, and they brought the actual actors in to do that during the rush hour. So people are really excited. They have the official Apple TV ad for that. You've also got some dude. What's your name? Parker or something? Parker Ortolani. His blog has his own pictures and his own view of that. So seeing what it was like as a normal person and not necessarily through the lens of Apple's marketing.
Was he like a fan of the show before he saw them at Grand Central Station?
I believe.
No, Terminal. Sorry.
So, yeah, I haven't read the blog post in a while, but I believe he was, and I think that was one of the things that he went out specifically for. He didn't just like randomly encounter it while rushing from work to home or vice versa. And then
and I saw a quick interview with the actor who's the star, Adam Scott, say it was like, they asked him what it was like. He says, well, we didn't get to go pee for like 3 hours.
Yeah.
Or none of us peed for 3 hours. Cool. And I put a link up here too that and this goes back to that interview I was telling you about with Miller, the director. Is it Miller?
Ben Stiller.
Ben Stiller, sorry. He was on. They showed this clip at the beginning of that episode of Cobel, the Cobel show. They basically did a whole makeup on it as Stephen Colbert being the new guy in Severance, right? So pretty funny. So and they filmed it on the actual sets where the show was filmed. So it's kind of cool.
Yeah, it's. I watched that when I was making the rounds on social the other day when they were promoting this in New York, and I thought, how much did they have to pay these actors to do that? Like, this is where Apple like unfurls its largeness upon the rest of the streaming world, and is like, we can afford to have the stars of our biggest show in a glass box in Grand Central Terminal for hours at a time. Good luck competing with our marketing dollars.
Yeah. Well, didn't they? Well, they had that free preview around Christmas time, right? Apple, I think.
Yeah, just after the New Year, I think. Yeah.
Or wasn't that just for this show to sort of get people to look at the show, right? Because as we said before, of the streaming services, they have the lowest number of subscribers, right?
They do, although and we've had some of these discussions, but like their catalog is starting to get pretty darned impressive. Like, I mean, we talk about their sci-fi programming, which is at a pretty high caliber. It's not all wins, but like the quality is extremely high. And, then you add on some of the stuff, like Presumed Innocent, which is a big hit for them last year. The Morning Show's still a big hit. Ted Lasso we talked about. You could make a case that if you're applying the Lopez principle on this stuff, it's well worth at least a few months of your time to go through their catalog now, which I'm not sure you could say 2 years ago.
Right, which is why they bootstrapped it with such a low price. We said, like, hey, is it really low? It's like, well, they hardly have anything, and it's less true now, and the price has jumped up accordingly.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's funny though, like if I think about the other services, right? So like between Netflix, Prime, Paramount, right? On all of those networks, I probably watch 10% of the shows that are there or movies that are there, right? Compared to like the number of titles that are. It's almost like an entire bargain bin. Those bins they used to have at the rental place where they just throw the movies in that nobody wants to see, and you can never find anything you would want to watch in there. That's what I feel like when I go to like Netflix or to. I'm constantly scrolling looking for something to watch, right? Whereas when I go to Apple, I've probably seen 80% of what's been out there.
Yeah.
Like it's just that much better quality shows, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So go watch Severance is what we're saying.
And we'll talk about that in a couple minutes.
We will.
All right, last headline.
I don't know if anybody else heard of this. I just kind of felt like it came out of nowhere. Mickey 17, which is a Warner Brothers film, starring Robert Pattinson. It definitely fits into the sci-fi thing. It's all about 3D printed clones, and it's vaguely got that Elysium kind of vibe of like, well, I have no prospects here. I'm super poor, so I'm just going to do something different to get a better life. So it's got it seems like dark comedy kind of thing. It didn't, it's serious, but it seems like fairly, entertaining, funny as well.
Well, and it's interesting. So this is the new movie that's coming from Bong Joon-ho, that is, who is obviously well known for, he's won 3 Academy Awards, including one for
He did Parasite, right?
For Parasite, and he did Snowpiercer as well. So he's both got some sci-fi chops and he's got some dark comedy chops, because Parasite, is kind of a dark comedy. When I did the same thing you're describing, Jaime. I saw this trailer drop the other day, and I was like, oh, it's a new Bong Joon-ho movie. I'll check out the trailer, and then was like, how did I not know about this? Like, it looks great. It looks really good. It's got a great cast: Robert Pattinson and Naomi Aki, Stephen Wen, Toni Collette, Mark Ruffalo, and it looks like a dark comedy version of Edge of Tomorrow.
Yeah, 100%.
The idea of like, this guy basically keeps dying over and over again, and he has to keep coming back. It looks somewhere between. I got Edge of Tomorrow, and I also got like Truman Show, kind of like, keep trying over and over again, in your loop and whatever. It looks really good. I would totally go watch this.
Yeah, I saw this. I thought we talked about it on the show, because I saw this. It's not this trailer. This is a new trailer that just came out. We're talking about, but I saw this movie coming out. Maybe when I was either trolling in IMDb or on Blue Sky or something like that. But I did see that this was coming, and I thought it was a comic book based movie, right? But like, he's the 17th clone, is what this Mickey 17 is, right? And he's basically a human rat, right? They test stuff on him.
Well, they give him just the worst jobs where the likelihood of him dying are extremely high. It's based on a novel by Edward Ashton. So yeah, that's obviously where they got the inspiration. But and it does have a sequel, so stay tuned. The book does. So
nice.
Yeah.
All right, well, that brings us to the main part of the show where we talk about something Star Trek related and other things, but this time we are going to continue our review-a-thon of Star Trek Prodigy Season 2. We're going to talk about Episode 3, and we're going to talk about Episode 4, and today, Episode 3 is Who Saves the Saviors? So how are we approaching this?
Well, I guess we could just sort of talk about like a quick what happened, and we can talk about our impressions. Anyone want to take the lead on the recap, or shall I jump on that hand grenade for us?
Jump on a hand grenade, yeah.
Okay, so Who Saves the Saviors? Basically, this one is so coming off the 2-part season premiere where we kind of set the stage. We have half the crew, half of our beloved Prodigy crew getting sucked into this temporal anomaly wormhole, and then Gwyn is off on her homeworld of Solum, trying to sort of convince them to maybe not go down the dark path that we know that they take from watching season 1. So we get this sort of epic battle between Gwyn and Essentia, where they're like down in this pit and they have to like duel it out and sort of fight their way through there. We've got Dal and Jankum and Zero and the Vulcan whose name is Majel, which I did not include to that in the first episode, that's clearly named for Majel Barrett.
Oh, really?
Her name is MAJ''EL. Mm-hmm. Didn't even clue till I was watching this week. So they are in the past on the world where Chakotay and his first officer, Commander Birdman, is there. And through their adventure, Dal ends up accidentally causing a temporal anomaly because he has a phaser knocked out of his hands. Chakotay picks up the phaser, and instead of the ship, the Protostar, going back to where they find it, where we start our adventure in season 1, Chakotay and his first officer get on the ship and leave. So they're like, ruh-roh. And because they do that, the temporal effects of that are that it causes Gwyn to lose her fight with Essentia. So Essentia basically ends up becoming this like ascending negative influence on her homeworld, while Gwyn is basically turning into Marty McFly from Back to the Future.
Yeah, or the siblings,
fading out of existence at the bottom of a chasm and that's sort of where we leave her after the first one.
Yeah, phasing in and out. I mean, and the MacGuffin of I don't know if it's MacGuffin of the first season of Prodigy or this one, is Chakotay, Robert Bertram's character, right? So the saviors in this particular episode are the mission is to get this Protostar launched in like 4 hours, right? And they've lost contact, or Janeway's lost Chakotay somewhere, right? So that's how they, accidentally in the first 2 episodes, they end up going into the wormhole. The kids do, right, on this new ship, and they stumble across Chakotay, and I want to say his name is Borom, the first officer, right?
Birdman. You don't like Commander Birdman? You don't think that works?
Hawkeye, Commander Hawkeye. They so the goal there really isn't a goal, because they're there by mistake anyway, right? And Janeway's all about like temporal changes and whatever. So don't do anything wrong, and of course the Vulcan Majel is reminding them of this, and of course Dal, being what he is, ends up making a big mistake, and they help them. They free them. They go over to the Protostar to take off, and as they're running towards the ship, they pick up the phaser or the blaster that Dal dropped, right? And that changes the timeline, and that's what affects, like Jonathan was saying, is that without the idea now is if they mess the timeline, they risk what is her name now? Gwyn ever being born. And by the way, I didn't realize that Ella Parnell voices Gwyn. She's the one from a TV show we watched a while ago.
The one on Amazon. Fallout.
Yeah, Fallout. So that's what happens here, and of course, it ends the episode with Gwyn phasing in and out, I believe is what they say, in terms of she's living in multiple times, and they have to try and figure out how to save her, having screwed up the whole timeline.
So, one quick aside, I find it unusual that the female Vulcan's name starts with the letter M, because we've really only had ones that start with T, S, or V, and only one V, which is notable because that was in Star Trek 6. But it's weird to have one start with M, because that's, I think, why I was a little caught off by it. I'm like, why does her name start with that? But anyway, yeah, I don't know. This was, I think, a bit of a stage setter episode that kind of obviously continued off the first 2 parts, but it definitely feels like this is a, we're going to feel the consequences of all this for the next few episodes kind of episode.
Yeah, and it's kind of also the setup for let's get the gang back together, right? Because the first thing I noticed about the first two episodes is why is Gwen not part of the crew, right? Because that was one of the sort of winning things of season one was they all kind of came together at the end of it, right?
Yeah.
And also, I wonder, in terms of timing, was this was actually out and released before Lower Decks season 5, right?
It was. So they dropped all this. Theoretically, it was available in the beginning of July last year.
No, but I mean, like the whole idea of the crew being, because Boimler went away in end of season 3, right?
Yeah.
And then Tendi went away at the beginning of season 5, right?
I think the divide and reunite concept is not a strange one for storytelling writ large, but also especially science fiction storytelling, right?
Yeah, I find. Well, I mean, and they do kind of make up for it in the next episode, Temporal Mechanics. I don't know if you want to jump there now, but
I'd like to hear what Jaime, if you have any strong feelings about this one.
Before you go there, I find that the concepts they're trying to teach kids through this stuff is pretty deep.
Well, we'll definitely get into that in the next one. But Jaime, do you have any impressions on this one? I don't know. It was a bit of a tweener, I think.
Yeah, it was kind of more of a glue one, right? You needed to meet Chakotay. You needed to set up the basic premise of, they really need to do everything they can to at least get the protostar back into the right spot in the timeline, so that things don't go bad. And you've got, you've got Gwyn's sort of factor, adding the more personal to them sort of thing, because they may or may not care concretely about like fixing the timeline per se, but saving their friend would really ground it and make it more personal for them.
Do you think that this was like, we always joke that it's Star Trek and we always joke that this is about teaching lessons. Jaime, did you get the feeling that this one was like teaching kids about the butterfly effect?
I guess so, because they do bring out the Temporal Mechanics 101 kind of thing here, which is literally the title of the next the next episode, right? Like it's something they're threading, and this isn't just for folks to take a pullback. This is, what are we going to be on at 3 and 4? So we're only partway through a 20 episode season, so this is much more akin to regular Star Trek of the 80s, 60s, 80s, and 90s than it is modern Trek of like you get like 10 episodes, and it could be episodic-ish with a large story arc, or it could be just 20 rando episodes, whatever. This one is a tweener in that respect as well. So if it's like, man, this one's just a filler, it's like, well, it's a glue one, but doesn't burn one of 8, one of 10, one of 13 episodes. It's like, we got some room here. We can set the stage, take some time.
Yeah. Well, that's a good jumping on point to the next episode, which, as you say, Jaime, is literally called Temporal Mechanics 101. Which could not hit the nail on the head any harder about our kind of running joke about this being like introduction to Star Trek concepts.
Yeah, there's a point there in the episode where they finally do have a conversation with Voyager through the, I don't know, wormhole mechanics, whatever they do, that they find a way to communicate. And Dal says, can you send me Temporal Mechanics 101? Because clearly he didn't read it. And then it starts with this sort of, kind of like junior high school science movie where this character comes on and explains temporal mechanics to us, to the kids, right?
Yeah, I mean, it is almost. I laughed out loud when it came on. I was like, wow, like that is the most overt they've been as far as like explaining themselves through these plots, to literally have somebody come on and go like, hey kids, do you want to learn how temporal mechanics works? And like, they've done that before though in this show, haven't they? Like I thought I mean they did. And again, that's kind of like, honestly, I respect it very much. Like it is a bit of a shame. Like we know that this is the second.
It's helpful to the adults too.
Yeah, we know that this is a second and I'm guessing final episode or season of this show, but I admire what they're trying to do. They're trying to make this an access point for younger viewers. They're trying to make the concepts that they go back to the well so often, and obviously we both make fun of / love about Star Trek, timey-wimey stuff, the way that the jargony gobbledygook, all these kinds of things that they do, they take the time to, actually break it down. They don't just assume knowledge like some of the other shows do. It's very commendable that they took this approach. It was aimed at a Nickelodeon audience, so they're going for like tweens and younger. They're going for people who maybe haven't seen a Star Trek show or know that their parents or grandparents enjoy the show, but need a better access point. It makes perfect sense. But then we've also talked about the fact that like that's what kind of leaves us sometimes feeling a little cold, is like, I don't need a 2-minute aside on how temporal mechanics work. I've seen literally hundreds and hundreds of episodes of Star Trek and other TV shows. So
right. But then again, like I said, like it maybe it is good for some people to do this, right? To learn about it. I mean, how else is Voldemort himself going to learn, right?
I guess. I will say though, the way in which it was funny that they're like, talking about ways you can travel in time, and they're like, slingshot yourself around the sun, like, look for it. But the easiest way is find a wormhole. Like, it's genuinely funny how they like basically go through all the beats of previous timey-wimey episodes of Star Trek. But this was a really unusual way of doing this. The fact that they basically absorb some of the energy from the temporal wormhole and then use that to not only travel distance but time. It's weird. It was a weird one. But in the end, as you say, Tim, this was really about getting the band back together, because not only do we get Dal, Zero, Jankum, and Majel going back and saving Gwyn, but then we get them reuniting with the Voyager. So we get Rock Talk and Murph in. So by the end of this first 4-episode arc, we're sort of at a new status quo where the band's back together. They're all aboard Voyager. We've got Janeway there, but now we've got this wrinkle of, but they've broken time and things are going to change, and they have to figure out how to fix all that. So again, as stage setting goes for a season ahead, it's good. And the real wrinkle on this one is the twist that comes at the end, where we see Murph as sort of the mastermind. Murph is communicating with a blurry person a la Enterprise.
Yeah, but that wasn't that agent dude that was on. We talked about him before, right?
That's the thing from the temporal police thing from Enterprise, right?
Right. Yeah. How to save a show that's failing with another show that failed.
I'm not sure that's a they should go back to a lot, but yeah, I don't know. Jaime, did this all make sense to you?
Yeah, I think so. I kind of had to remind myself. I was like, wait, where were these kids from, and where was Chakotay in terms of the timey-wimey stuff?
Aren't the kids from the future too?
No, they're from the present that they are all in, because we've got like the gray-haired, slightly silver-haired Janeway. It's Chakotay that went into the past, right?
Oh, okay. And that's the same. So how did Gwyn end up in the past with her father from before? Or did Gwyn's father go into the past even?
Gwyn is in the present, but she and her dad had come from the future.
Let me put it this way. So in the beginning of Prodigy season 1, they find the protostar, which her father had stolen and lost.
But he had come from the future to that point.
Right. Okay.
And Black Gwyn
from the future.
From the future.
Oh, okay.
Because in the present, the world that they were visiting in the first couple episodes, where Gwyn went back and they were doing, and there was the younger version of the Diviner and all that stuff. That's because that's now, not the future where he gets.
And it's the planet that Gwyn comes from, right?
Yes, it is.
Right.
Yeah.
So Chakotay lost the protostar.
So the idea is that in the initial way it worked, Chakotay and his first officer were stuck on the planet. The protostar left without them and ended up on that mysterious planet where we started in episode 1 of season 1, where they uncover the protostar, where Dal finds it down, lost under this planet. And it's been there for a while because time has passed, right? From the 52 years earlier that Chakotay lost it. And then this one, the idea is they go through this wormhole that takes them back to that time when they were there, and then they screw it up. So not only does the ship go, but Chakotay goes. So now they basically created a temporal paradox.
Mm-hmm. So a big chocolate mess by the time we get to 20 episodes.
Yeah. I assume this is going to carry us through most of the season.
Yeah, I was shocked to learn, thank you, Jaime, that there are 20 episodes I have to sit through.
If you think of it, it's really like...
Thanks, Keen. Thanks
it's
a lot.
It's really like 10-ish because they're, 20, 25-ish minutes.
Oh, they're bite-sized, right. Yeah.
They do go by, obviously, much quicker than a standard Star Trek, which is usually now in the streaming area more than double the length.
Yeah. It's funny, just aside here, I mean, I was kind of migrainey yesterday, so I really shouldn't have been using my Vision Pro, but I couldn't watch this on the Apple TV. It kept buffering. Yeah, but when I watched it on the Vision Pro, it was like nice and smooth, silky smooth. But I guess it's because you can't download episodes on the Apple TV 4K thing, which I was surprised to learn as well. Go figure. But I ended up watching, I think I watched the end of it on my phone, actually. It didn't make any difference. The only question I have about this particular... Okay, so have we discussed the fact that they do get to the point where they go back in time and pick her up? Or they go forward in time?
They go forward in time because they are returning to their present because they were in the past with Chakotay.
Oh, that's where she was. But she was talking to her dad, and he didn't know he had a daughter. So that
because again, he came from the future.
Oh, he's in the future. Okay, yeah. Okay, sorry.
I know it really is starting to get. This is where it kind of.
This is where we have to have a temporal mechanics 101 course at the beginning of this episode. Yeah. So just to finish my point. So the challenge I had was, okay, I get that she was phasing through time, kind of like Kirk was when he got lost in the transporter, right? But so they put a warp bubble around the ship and make it go back in time, right? Or forward in time? Forward in time,
yeah.
Yeah, because they realize she's like kind of existing across all the times, right?
Yep.
So yeah, did you buy that? I mean, I know we're talking about. I mean, I love that there was one thing where Janeway sort of says like, how come we're not affected by the wormhole? And well, of course, we've got the wormhole compensators and the sensors, right?
It's important to teach children about the conveniences of making stuff up that fits conveniently into telling these stories too, right?
Or maybe it isn't a good idea.
Yeah.
Yeah, and they do throw some Easter eggs, right? Like I think it's the Temporal Mechanics 101 course that teaches about like, you could do something like slingshot around the star if you wanted to build a time machine. Yeah, and somebody somewhere mentions Worf in the anomaly and how they might be able to use to figure out where they're going to go, kind of thing. So. There's stuff there, right? Like
I thought they mentioned Spock with the what Commander Spock did when they went to get the whales. They didn't say the whales, but that was the method he used to go back in time, right?
Yeah, it was the slingshot, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, all of it makes my brain hurt.
Well, now, as you say, we got to a point where we know where everybody is.
Yeah. So let me ask you. So you were not very happy with the first two episodes, Jonathan?
It just was a little bit, it was not my favorite of what I've seen so far.
So, and does 3 and 4 have any redemption for you at all?
It does kind of close the loop a little bit on it. It was certainly, I think, a little less rushed, maybe. I felt like the first two episodes kind of tried to cram in a little too much of like, especially if I'm viewing this through the lens of new viewers, younger people maybe. Or
first-time viewers, yeah. Maybe they haven't seen season 1, right?
Well, true, but also, like introducing the Doctor character, introducing a bunch of concepts, and then, I didn't think they did a very good job of sort of recapping how we got here and what really matters. I came out of it just a little bit muddled, and I have a pretty strong memory, so I was like, damn, I have to go back and remember what all these things are. So yeah, it didn't knock my socks off. I feel better after watching these two as far as sort of a closing the loop and understanding where we are, although I have issues with stories that play fast and loose with the laws of temporal mechanics. When when Chakotay picks, from the moment he picks up that phaser, everything should have just gone kablooey. And they're like, well, no, but we're protected by this, blah, blah, blah. And like, all right. So sure. But, again, I think you just have to, very much embrace it or not. If you choose to embrace it, you just enjoy the ride. And that's what I'm going to try and do with it.
Yeah, I mean, and the fact that she said right there, like Janeway said, that Gwyn would be the only person affected in the entire universe.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Sure. Do you feel, how do you guys feel after 4 episodes? Do you feel like you're getting your money's worth?
Better. It's more tolerable, I think, Yeah. I mean, it was pretty to look at. I mean, if you want to look at Pew Pew, I mean, the effect of the warp bubble thing was pretty cool, and the fighting between the two ladies, Gwyn and Essentia, was kind of interesting, fun, tussling, right?
Yeah. Well, let's see what episodes 5 and 6 bring us next week.
Yes, we will see.
And thanks again, Keen.
Now, a word from our sponsor. Now, back to the show.
So let's move on to Silo, the finale of Silo, now that I think about it, right?
Well, season 2 finale anyways.
Season 2 finale, and the spoilers in the title, Into the Fire.
Yep.
Right? So, how are we doing Silo again? I mean, good episode. We kind of finally get back to Silo 18, right? But after, they're about to tear each other limb from limb, which is kind of what we predicted would happen anyway, right?
Yeah, I wasn't. So, the overall story of this is, that everything kind of comes to a head as you kind of hope it would for a season-ending episode. We get kind of the culmination of the sort of rebellion-ish kind of thing that's happening in Silo 18 with sort of the culmination of Juliet's attempts to try and assemble a suit and get back to Silo 18 to warn them, don't go out the door. And I wasn't sure, I'll be honest, by the time we got to the end of episode 9 of this season, I was like, boy, are they going to try and land this? It feels like we were headed towards the patented Jaime Lopez Hold My Beer episode, and we kind of did get that, but I didn't feel like it was overpaced. Sometimes when you're like, oof, are they going to be able to land all this in one last episode? And you're like, boy, I don't know if they can. I thought they actually did a pretty good job of wrapping up the sort of the rebellion, and then also satisfyingly wrapping up the emotional arc that Juliet's been on with the survivors in 17, and then getting back. I'm not sure that I loved. There's definitely, I'll tell you that there's definitely some changes from how the story plays out in the book. Not better or worse, just different. But they definitely made a few things a little more ambiguous, and I have been led to understand from following along on Reddit and a couple other places that some people are very what about both what happens to Juliet and Bernard at the end of this episode, and also what the epilogue is about on this as well. So yeah, you neither of you have obviously read ahead. How did this land for you? Did you feel like you got your money's worth as far as wrapping up the rebellion and Juliet's arcs, and then obviously Bernard's as well? Yeah,
I mean, there was the sort of not promise to come back to 17. You kind of wonder if there will be at some point in the future a convergence of the two silos, right? Or at least the people from the other silo, and then the whole, I'm going to give up and just hand over the keys to somebody else, kind of walking away from everything he's built as is he mayor, I think?
Yeah, Bernard's the mayor. Yeah.
Tim Robbins' character. Yeah, so the mayor kind of constantly holds his ground and has manipulated everything, and then finally at the end of it, he just gives up and grabs the suit and goes and tries to leave, right? And at the same time, the rebellions kind of get to the point where they're everybody's at each other's throats, and they're about to tear each other limb from limb when the hero shows up and cleans the camera, right? She finally gets her. I mean, I liked the little bit that they did with the suit being all moth eaten, and I mean, I don't know why she wouldn't have checked that first of all, right? As soon as she found it, you know?
Well, because she
Or
doesn't
going
want to
back
tip
and
her
check
hand, right? Because Hope is with her when she finds it, right?
Yeah. And then, but I like the fact, Solo's solution. He just he runs away with the fire suit and the helmet and does a quick test himself by going underwater with it, right?
Yeah. And obviously it comes back around too, because the disinfecting flames that we see at the end of the episode or towards the end of the episode.
Oh, right.
She's not wearing an outside suit. She's wearing a fire suit.
Oh, spoilers.
Dude, it's right there. She's wearing a firefighter suit. They mentioned it like 20 times.
Yeah, but I mean, the fact that we're giving away the ending here, but the fact that they end up in a fireball, right? So does that mean that the mayor doesn't survive the situation?
Well, as long as we've delved into spoiler world, it was confirmed by the showrunner that Bernard does not survive.
Yeah. Okay.
But I will say again, like, this is a pretty the way that this story plays out is very kind of different in that way. They've made the mayor a much less nefarious, like manipulative, yes, but again, he seems to have his own sort of moral code of what he's trying to do based on his knowledge. The book paints him a little more plainly as more manipulative and a little more cruel, and so the way that sort of plays out in his at the end of this season versus the end of the book is pretty different. His choice to sort of warn Juliet, like, you have to get down, the flames are coming, that kind of stuff, that's very, very different than it plays out in the book. So yeah, it's I would still recommend, as a matter of fact, I know one of our listeners messaged me.
I have a copy of the book. I plan on.
Yeah, one of our listeners messaged me and said, I picked up the book and I'm now reading it and, devouring it. So it's definitely, there's lots of same material. The characters are very similar, but sort of just how some of the things play out. Obviously, books are longer and more complicated, so they can go a bunch of different places. But I thought, as far as landing this plane, when they had kind of really spent the whole season building up, like, will Juliet get there in time? Will they go out? Will the revolution work? All that kind of stuff. Like, I felt like this was a pretty satisfying end. Jaime, I'm really curious to know what you think, again, as somebody who hasn't sort of had any foreknowledge of this.
Yeah, I think this episode got us to where I was hoping we could get to. I mean, it does, we talked about some stuff being stretched out where it's like, well, maybe they didn't need to hold to 10. Maybe they could have had like 8 episodes and crisped it up a little bit. I'm aware that the books don't end in this spot, so people are like, well, this ends in a weird spot, and it seems like they pushed some stuff back and pulled some stuff forward. I think yes. People said non-spoilery, so other people said, yeah, I think I see how they could land this, because if you rearrange that, then you can see what another season looks like for the third and another season for the final fourth. So I'm okay with where it got to, but I feel like this season was a bit more disjointed. Again, kind of repeating my complaint of, like, I think because they didn't have the guts to keep the main character off the show for like 3 or 4 episodes in a row. That's really hard to do for this kind of thing. People are like, where did she go? Whereas in a book, it's like, oh, that person's totally coming back. I just got to read more pages.
And they definitely did that, Jaime, to your point, they definitely did that in the book. There's much, much longer stretches of her being alone in Silo 17 in the book than there are in the show. The before she sort of meets Solo and meets some of the other characters and stuff, she's alone and in her own head for a while, which again serves the book narrative quite well. But it wouldn't make for terrific television if you just had Rebecca Ferguson grunting and swearing for, multiple episodes while she's trying to do stuff. So again, obviously books and television are completely different mediums, and they got to kind of roll with what works. I don't object to really any of the changes that they made, although there were some different, some of the relationship-y stuff in all this, and just a few changes to some of the characters' motivations that I'm a little curious about. But again, I think they've proven to me over 2 seasons that they get it. I know Hugh Howey's involved in this, so like obviously, he's putting his 2 cents in on sort of what he thinks these characters would do or whatever. But I think I'm overall satisfied. I'm glad to hear that this kind of worked for you. What did you think of the epilogue, though?
Epilogue?
The scene in, we'll say, modern, not the future.
Oh, that. Yeah. Okay, that. Okay,
my significant other asked, like, did another show accidentally start up? Because it doesn't queue up. I was like, no, we're watching the same thing. Look, remember how I've been telling her, isn't it kind of interesting that there's 51 silos? I'm like, I can do some math there, and
well, we are the 51st state.
She was like, what do you mean? I was like, well, I would say, well, what if you were assuming that this is the U.S., where land-wise they're at, or what would remain of the U.S.? I'm like, well, you would have 50 states plus D.C. as a non-state that would be politically powerful enough to get...
Poor Puerto Rico.
An Iowa state silo, a California silo, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah.
So are we saying that she walked across state lines?
No, I think the idea would be there is a place for each whatever.
Oh, for each state, right?
Yeah,
okay,
instead of like a lifeboat, it's like, all right, so California, you get to choose your starter
20
seed
or 200 people, yeah,
right. And it's same thing, and it's going to be like rich and powerful, and like, hey, let's make sure they're like doctors and scientists and other things that are useful.
And maybe some worker bees too, right?
Yeah, no YouTubers, no TikTokers,
no immigrants. Yeah.
What? Those aren't the ones you'd save first? What?
Podcasters, we're one of the first to go down. We have no use unless we. I don't see anybody like telling stories. There's no minstrels or other sorts of things that we could turn into. We're part of the relics. So somewhere there's our podcast on like a USB drive or something.
Yeah.
Well, it's smashed on a hard drive, actually. Yeah.
And it was interesting. Like, obviously, it wasn't just a one-off because one of the actors that we saw in that last scene was Jessica Henwick, who, she's obviously a well-known commodity. She has been in, she was in Iron Fist. She's been in those like Marvel Defenders shows. She's been in all kinds of stuff over the years, and she's like a reputable actor. She was in Game of Thrones. She was in Matrix, the latest Matrix movie. Like she's going to be one of the stars of the show going forward, which is awesome. And Ashley Zuckerman's the one that plays the congressperson. Was on Succession and some other stuff too. So we got a sneak preview of not just like a one-off scene, but of new characters that we're going to spend some time with. So
are you spoiling us about what's happening in season 3? Is that what you're trying to do here?
I mean, there definitely is a jumping off point. But yeah, it'll be interesting to see. I mean, to the point that I think you both made, it'll be interesting to see how they pull it together. So Wool is set in a future. Shift, which is the second book, is primarily a prequel, and then Dirt, I think, is the third one, is set back in the future again. So it was always going to be curious as to how they tried to tell this story in television form, because, as you say, how long do you want to be away from Rebecca Ferguson and the rest of the crew? The question is, will season 2 bounce back and forth, or season 3, will it bounce back and forth in time as they tell the two stories, or will it really focus on how we got here? Because the real mystery of the silo is, how the hell did it come to this, right?
Oh, okay, right. So
that's kind of where that epilogue is how did we get here? And we got just a little bit of a teaser in there that, a dirty bomb went off in Washington. There's clearly, radiation in the air, so contingencies are being made. And so where does that take us for season 3, right?
So that's a good question, though. Do we need to know the origin of the silos?
I guess you do if you want to know who are sort of the omnipotent voice that we hear and all these contingencies. And, I think you kind of want to know
Fry,
that.
right? Stephen Fry, right? He's going to be
he's a giant droid, and he lives up in the tower.
With a big red light, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, my only sort of regret in this is it's going to be probably at least a couple of years till we see the next one. Although, if this one is shot in a more contemporary timeline, a lot less production and all that kind of stuff needs to go into it. So maybe it comes like a scotch faster. That'd be nice. But overall, I think this was a good second season. I don't think it was as strong as the first season, just because I think the first season had a much more cohesive through line. The sort of the mystery of what happened in season 1, I think, was stronger than the mystery in season 2. But I do think as a sort of, continuing story, I think it's good. I mean, middle seasons are always going to be a little bit of glue more than completely plot driven, but I think it was good.
Yeah, it's interesting when you think about it, like that she was convinced as she was over at Silo 17 that all hell would break loose, and she had to get back to save her people. What would have happened if she went back and they were like, "Oh, where did you go? You're back."
Yeah,
like as if nothing happened.
We thought you were dead.
We were just farming and making
life
carrots
as usual.
And stuff.
What are you talking about?
Yeah. What's the big deal? What's your panic?
Yeah.
Speaking of life as usual, how about Severance season 2?
Yeah,
episode 1.
We now have the first episode of season 2 after a long wait. I will confess that I am the last of the gang to jump on the Severance bandwagon. It occurred to me, since I am here in the wilds of New Brunswick, starting my new life here, that I have some time on my hands. So I sat down over the course of the last week and watched the first season, which is of course only 9 episodes, so it wasn't too onerous.
You're just like you're a newbie?
I'm a newbie. I hadn't made time for it. I knew that you had both talked about it. I knew that it was something that was very critically acclaimed, but I hadn't really made the time for it. So I thought, well, I've got the time now. I'll dive in, and I can appreciate obviously the angst that this show brought for a lot of people of like having to sort of wait to find out after the events of the finale from the first season. And obviously, they created this real like puzzle box of a show that, I imagine when it was in its first season was a real ride as far as like what's happening, what is all this? It's beautifully shot. I mean, credit to Ben Stiller and to the rest of the people who directed the first season and really made the look for it. Again, we talk about Apple unfurling itself and its budget upon the rest of the streaming world, but like this looks expensive and beautifully made and beautifully shot and
well kept secrets too, apparently.
Well, and that's the other thing is too, like they can really afford to do this, but yeah, I was really impressed with the first season as somebody who was a very late comer. So what were your experiences? Did you both watch it when it was episode by episode the first season?
I did, yeah.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
And
I think I might have watched I don't think I started right at the very beginning, but I did get into it fairly early.
Yeah,
likewise.
And how did it play in the moment as far as sort of the mystery, and then knowing that you got to the end of the first season, you have this huge gap of like, wait, what?
Yeah,
it definitely required for me coming back into this for that reason, right? Because it is very much like unraveling the mystery and seeing what's going on. And 3 years later, I'm like, I don't remember much of that. And I was talking to my senior brother. I was like, okay, here's the major plot points I remember. Let's go find a 15-minute video on YouTube that recaps season 1 and hope that it's pretty accurate for us to be ready for season 2.
Did you find one, a video to watch?
Yeah, I don't have a particular one because there's many. You could watch a 3-minute, an 8-minute, a 15-minute. There's like a 30-minute and another longer one. So
right,
there's we lucked on one of like 15 seems long enough that it'll go more than just superficial detail, but not so long because we didn't want to wait an hour to catch up before watching the episode.
Yeah, well, I worked in enough cubicles and to find this to be so true to life.
Yeah. The stuff where they were doing in the first season of like, hey, you've met your quota, we're gonna have a melon party, like that is such an identifiable
party. You
like,
get to choose the music.
Hey, this absurd thing that this massive faceless corporation is giving you as a treat, and you're like, cool. And yet it's all you have to look forward to. It was sadly identifiable.
Yeah, and how come he gets the melon party and I never get the melon party? So coming back to the question you asked, though, so I found this particular episode in like I found the first season it had me on the edge of my seat the whole time, right? This episode didn't. I couldn't find my seat. I didn't find. I mean, getting the band back together, that whole trope again. But yeah, I as a first episode of the second season, I wasn't really blown away. I don't know about you guys, but like, how did you? I was going to ask you that, Jonathan, having the freshest eyes on all the plot points from part one, right? Because there was a bunch.
Yeah, I think it was well told in the way that if they had, basically sort of all snapped back and were all immediately together, it probably wouldn't have landed as well. But to have, Mark be our focus and then him, back in this world, but things have changed, but they're still kind of the same, but then no one else is around, and him trying to sort of figure out, all of the where, what's, and whys, and then to slowly have it sort of come together with, what Irving went through at the end of the first season, obviously, falling for Bert and then trying to connect with Bert, but then having his heart broken. And then most importantly, the stuff that happened with Helly, and then her choice in this first episode. So obviously we're going to talk about this episode. So spoilers if you don't want to know what happened, although I don't know why you'd listen if you aren't, but, to have her come in and be like, nope, I'm nobody. I was just in an apartment. I'm not, I'm nothing special, when we know that she's actually part of the ruling clan of Lumen, was really interesting. So to know that she now has this massive secret, and also we know that she and Mark share this attraction, or at least their innies do, as well as now knowing that Mark's wife was the Dyken Lockman character. Is like, it definitely has added some layers of like, I want to see how this plays out. I did find it a little bit, the discussions that they had about, well, we're back, why would we stay, particularly for the Helly character, like how they convinced Helena to let Helly go back in when we've seen her obviously, blow the whistle and, and really make a mess of things. Seems a little slightly implausible, but as you say, I mean, the whole thing is about the next thing, and the next thing for each of them is, Helly has to figure out how to process the fact that she's a monster on the outside world, and Irving has to figure out who he is now that he knows about these things about himself. And obviously Mark now knowing that his wife is not only alive when he thought she was dead, but is somewhere inside the Lumen building.
Which means she's got to have an outie as well, right? So.
Well, yeah. Or does she? Or is she just, because they take her down below, and then even Dylan, right? Like he didn't get to see his outside, but then he's got all these temptations. He knows that he has a family. He knows that he has this life outside because he got that first glimpse in episode 8 of the first season. So I think, having watched it this way, where I watched up to the end of the first season and I stopped, even though the first episode of the second season was available, I stopped and gave myself a day or two just to let it breathe for a little bit. And then I watched the first one from this one, so that I didn't in any way replicate what you all went through with 3 years of waiting, but just to take a beat and then come back to it. I didn't think this was bad. It was obviously it's stage setting for what's to come, but yeah, it was pretty good, I thought.
Yeah, I didn't really feel it was like 3 years, but then I kept getting in the elevator and going down. So, but so you think that the Harmony Cobel character and Milchick, they don't have the chip in their heads?
They don't, and they've made that pretty clear because obviously we've seen Harmony on the outside having the same knowledge that she has on the inside, because she recognizes, stuff about Mark and so we know that's
next
true.
Neighbors.
And then same thing with Milchick, because, we see him after hours and everything. So he basically says, like, I come and go and, whatever. So, I think those two are sort of cognizant, but then I don't know that Milchick is as maybe as completely in the loop on all the stuff that Cobel was. So yeah, so that'll, I guess.
But he's taking over her role, though, right? So
he is for now. I mean, it's hard to imagine that they don't. I mean, obviously season 2 has dropped tonight. I'm sure we're all going to watch it in short order, and we'll talk about it on next week's podcast. But you're not going to keep the Patricia Arquette. She was so just odd and fanatical and weird in that first season. Like, it was a really interesting performance.
Yeah, she's not going to let go of that character, I don't think. Right?
So she'll be back. And again, it's hard to imagine that she doesn't interact with the Innies as well, because there is all those dynamics. But yeah, how they go forward when they all have this knowledge, and that video that they showed them with like the stop motion animation with Keanu Reeves doing the voice of the Lumen building, no less, was a real thing. That was creepy and weird and unsettling. About we're thankful that they did this, and like, I'm sure that's going to play out. So yeah. So Jaime, you're a long timer as well. What about you?
Yeah, I recognize this one as a bit of a glue episode, because it does have a 5-month gap and it does need to bring people together. So my recap was like, push the reset button, but not really. You're resetting the deck chairs to get us the crew back together with some new twists, like. My big question was, why is Miss Wong so young?
Yeah.
Yes, the literal answer is because when I was born, but like
that is a very funny retort, by the way.
Yeah, it's like, but it is still kind of weird that they have a child in there.
Or she could be like a Sheldon, right? So, and does does she have a chip too, right? Like, that's the weird question.
Well, the who does and who doesn't, I think, is actually kind of a fascinating part of the show, because you really never know who has what knowledge and when. Obviously, things have changed as the season's gone on, and particularly now that we've had this moment where the three characters outside of, and even Dylan, have now seen the life of their outer selves. But the who knows what of it, and who's keeping what secrets from whom, like, because clearly even Cobel knew things that Milchick didn't, and that's kind of the fun of it, right?
Yeah, well, I mean, the title is probably my favorite part of the show. Is that cross between IT and HR, where he's now in the supervisor position, but his computer keeps greeting him as Miss Cobel.
Yeah.
Hello, Miss Cobel. and he's like, when can I get this changed? Like, it's his top priority right now is to get the name on his computer changed.
I like it when he spells it out. He's like, no, MR period. Yeah. What I mean, what do you hope for? What do you want to see this season? Like, what's do you have an expectation?
Yeah, the first season went to the whole exposing the damage that they're doing to these people. I mean, that's, like you said, that's Helly's Audi, Helena, I think you said her name was, yeah. Right? She kind of exposes to the board this what they're really doing to the people down there, kind of thing, right? And then the people in the Innies kind of like having their little mini rebellion. And Mark has his rebellion when he comes back, even though he's supposed to have gone off and been rehabilitated. It kind of seems like he still has that rebellious streak, right?
Yeah.
And he still remembers what he remembered, right?
Yeah. I just would also like to flag, since we're talking about this show, I started watching it and was like, I can't quite place where I know Britt Lauer from. And then it struck me that she was one of the main characters on a great show called Man Seeking Woman with Jay Baruchel, which is available on Disney+. It's shot in Toronto, so it's very, very identifiable environment. It is sort of it's a comedy, but it's definitely black comedy, and it's mostly about the Jay Baruchel character's wreck of a romantic life, where he sees the literal embodiment of absurd things. So like when he goes on a date and she turns out to be, an unattractive troll, she's literally an unattractive troll who's sitting across the table from him. It's very, very silly at times, but it's a tremendously sharp show. And Britt Lauer plays his sister on that show. And there are some episodes that focus pretty much primarily on her. And she really impressed me on that show. I remember at the time when I watched it, and that was years ago, like easily 7-8 years ago. I remember at the time thinking like, wow, she's great. And so when it took me like a good solid bit of the first episode where I was like, that's where I know her from. But if you get a chance, I would put that one on your list because it is a very, very good show. Very funny, very sharp. Jay Baruchel's obviously, I like him too. He's a Canadian kid. But she's the one who in that show when I finished watching. I mean, for me, Jay was a well-known quantity. Eric Andre's in it and he's great. And I like him independently, but I didn't know her from before that. And she's terrific in that show. One of the episodes, she has like a torrid love affair with Santa Claus. It's so funny. It's so funny. And she is terrific in it. So if you like Britt Lauer, check that one out.
All right. Well, we're looking forward to the next episode, which is on the Disney Plus as we record at
Or the Apple TV Plus.
PM. Yeah, Apple TV Plus. What did I say?
You said Disney Plus.
Oh, well, whatever. It's all the same, right?
Yeah,
not
something
really.
with a plus. Just check out everything's with a plus. You'll find it.
Really. Yeah, as we said before, this is the one with the smallest audience and the best shows. All right. We move to our watch list now.
Go for it.
What do you got there, Jaime?
I have one.
But before, actually, I should give you a lead in here. In that, Greg always says some things are eventually everything's follow up, right?
Yeah. I got around to watching Jim Henson's Idea Man. This is on Disney Plus. So does that plus, and it's a good one. It helped fill in a lot of the Jim Henson story and timeline for me. I sort of knew some of the major beats, but didn't really realize that there's in the multiverse, he made a really cool set of discos and never really did anything else with his life. He never became the person who gave us so many of these classic characters, and then some of the complexity around his personal versus professional life, and some of the weird sort of stars lining up, no pun intended, to just produce the dang show in the first place, of the Muppet Show as the biggest one. That was pretty surprising to me. I didn't know some of those details. I don't know how this compares to other documentaries and takes. I don't know how original it is in that respect, or what exactly is new, but it was pretty enjoyable for me.
Yeah, the Fred Rogers documentary is pretty cool too. And the Ernie Coombs. There's an Ernie Coombs one. He was our Mr. Dress Up here in Canada, which would have no reference to you whatsoever. But I thought was really cool was I remember watching the Muppets on Ed Sullivan and stuff like that back when they were black and white, and I had forgotten that they were in season 1 of Saturday Night Live until I saw this, right? And there was a real animosity between Jim Henson's Muppets and the cast, the not ready for prime time players, because they thought they were stealing camera time from them, right? And that in the movie Saturday Night, which is out, I don't know, it'll be on something soon. I'm surprised it wasn't nominated for something. But Nicholas Braun, who was from Succession, he played the young nephew in Succession. I don't know if you guys ever watched that show, but he ended up getting hired. I think he was hired to be Andy Kaufman on the Saturday Night Live movie, or Saturday Night Movie. And he does an amazing job of Andy Kaufman, right? But apparently the actor who played Jim Henson pulled out. And so...
he played multiple parts, right?
Yeah, so he ended up playing Jim Henson as well, but Jim Henson with a full beard and long hair, and they never on the same scene at the same time. But and it's not meant to be the same. You're not meant to. You realize it's the same actor, right? But you're not meant to think it's the same person, and it's not, right? But interesting that they gave that role to the same person, and he did an amazing job. He was amazing as Jim Henson, frustrated about the way that they kept abusing the Muppets. That's all I can say. You have to watch the movie, and then it did. Was it the Foreign Man, the routine that Andy Kaufman did with the Mighty Mouse record and Elvis and stuff. Yeah, so he doesn't. I mean, it's like you literally could take it right off of YouTube and superimpose, and you would know which is which. So
cool.
But I really did. Jonathan and I obviously are huge fans of Jim Henson, and I think I saw this when it first came out. So loved it. Cool. All right, so I've got a couple of things. Jonathan, you don't have a pick this week, or?
I don't, just because I spent my week watching Severance. So
Severance season 1 is your
Severance
pick.
season 1 is my recommendation. Although I guess I'll add Man Seeking Woman, because I really would highly recommend that one.
Yeah, cool. So I stumbled across the menu, and I landed in the middle of it's a movie that came out a couple of years ago, and it kind of, I think you know how you get this, Hollywood does one thing and another production company does the same thing. Like I don't know if
Deep Impact and Armageddon. And,
it's always like there's always they come in twos, right?
And yeah.
So the menu is kind of riding on, I don't know, again, like it's kind of riding on the Bears' coattails because they were about the same time frame, like within a year or two of each other, right? So, but I landed in the middle of the movie, which has got a huge twist in the middle, right? Maybe I said too much, but it's about like, this sort of hoity-toity, you go to this special restaurant and the chef has like this amazing reputation and plan, and there's a young lady who is escorting a man. And turns out that, the staff of the restaurant not that we recognize her, but they recognize the role she's playing in this relationship. And they're upset about it, but you can't figure out why, right? And then there's a whole, it's like several tables at this, one's a food critic with her magazine editor. There's a couple of, young guys who have come up in the world. They're like, they've got a startup or something that's amazing and on fire. There's a famous actor character who's, surprised that nobody runs up to him asking for autographs all day. And then there's Ralph Fiennes as this psychotic, that's all I can say, level chef, right? And it's kind of like it takes place on an island. So they're on a boat. They go to this restaurant in the middle of nowhere, and the boat leaves, and they're kind of stuck. It's kind of like a Twilight Zone episode in that sense, in that they're stuck in this situation, and with this amazing food yeah. All I can say is just watch it. You'll be surprised. It's listed some places as a comedy, but I would call it a thriller. So it's a thriller comedy. Right?
Yeah.
Yes. Have you seen it?
I have.
Okay.
A while back, because it's Anya Taylor-Joy.
Was my review spoiler free?
Yeah. No, you did well, because it definitely, there are some. Yeah, it's hard to it's hard to not anticipate the twist. Just going into it, but
well, so I went back and watched it from the beginning on Disney the other day, Disney Plus. So surprising that it's on Disney Plus too.
Yeah, although, again, there's lots of stuff that comes in through like FXX and stuff like that are dark on there too. But yeah, what caught my eye was I enjoy Anya Taylor-Joy's performances, and so I definitely was drawn to it because I saw she was in it, and she's quite good in it. But you're right. I would say it's somewhere between. I mean, it's not unlike Severance and some of those, like it builds the tension. It's got some thrillery stuff to it, but it's also kind of some black humor and also a little horror-y in times. And yeah.
And so we were talking earlier about, I forgot the context, something about teaching children maybe, right? So this is a video I saw today earlier on the socials, and I'm calling it Addicted to Phonics. I don't know what the actual title is, but it's about a couple of parents who are concerned that their daughter is too much into phonics, because she's reading, like, they found a Webster's dictionary under her bed. And so they decided to have an intervention with her about the fact that she has learned all these words, $10 words, let's call it, and they can't keep up. And she keeps using words, and they keep like sending her to her room because they don't understand what the word means, right? But I think it's a sarcastic commercial for phonics. So check it out. It's really, really funny. It's on the YouTube here. We've got a link for you to watch it. So kind of sprung it on you guys because I just added it to the notes as you were talking. Yeah, it's kind of like the funny version of Temporal Mechanics 101. Yeah, and that's it for me. And I guess that's it for another week. So hey, Jonathan, if people want to get in touch with you, where would they find you? In the middle of nowhere?
Yeah, well, you can drive into the wilds of New Brunswick, or you can look for me on Instagram or Blue Sky as at JPK News, or you can find me on YouTube at youtube.com/@JPK.
Did you start following me on Blue Sky?
Sure did.
Okay, because I have a sci-fi starter thing or podcast starter thing I'll add you to.
Yeah, please do.
There's some other guy that I do podcasts with occasionally. I can't seem to find him on Blue Sky.
I certainly looked. He was the second person I looked for, and
Really?
didn't have any luck.
All right. So, hey, Jaime, people can get in touch with you. Where do they find you?
I'm on Instagram as @TheDevWithTheHair.
Look at you! Look at you!
Yay! Good boy. Yeah. Well, I mean, Jaime and I were talking off camera before, or off recording before we started here today. It's been an eventful week. It's been a really long 4 years, and it's only fourth day.
It's the longest decade ever. Has been the first week of this year.
Yeah, exactly. And so there was something that happened on Monday, and I am no longer on the platform with the X. I pulled the plug. But if you want to get a hold of me, you can find me. I'm TIMMITRA on the Twitter. No, not.
Nope.
Jesus. Whoa, Jaime! Look what you did to me.
It's hard to get out of the rhythm, right? Like you just get used to.
Yeah.
That's why I completely flubbed it when Jonathan wasn't here, because I'm like, I'm not next. You got the voice actor while he's like still, out on smoke breaks. And what? And he's trying to put it away. Right, immediately put it out.
Yeah. Anyway, I am TIMMITRA on Blue Sky, on Instagram, and a lot of other social networks. But yeah, not that one. So until next time, we'll see you in the future.
Bye.
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 You've been listening to the Spotcast podcast. If you want to find out more about the podcast or see the episode show notes, visit the Spotcast website at spotcast.com. If you have feedback or questions, you can get in touch with us on the website. If you like the show, please consider recommending us to a friend, writing a review on iTunes, or pledging any amount at patreon.com/spotcast. You can find details on how to help us on our website, spotcast.com/sponsor us. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you in the future.
Hello. Yeah, so here we go.
Yeah, it's been a week.
It has been a week, yep.
So have you, Jaime, have you been assigned a gender, or how's your week going?
Just flip a coin.
Yes.
It's slowing down because I think all the heavy hitters were really early on day one, so the rest of this is like, oh, okay, it's still bad, but it's like comparatively less bad than the other stuff that came out immediately. So it's an expensive mess. You have attorney generals already, filing lawsuits against a whole bunch of executive orders and stuff. So it's just a big bunch of a waste of time, a lot of signaling that hopefully is just going to, waste everybody's legal time and cause a lot of heartache and consternation, but not lead to actual changes in many spots. But there's still going to be some big changes that are just going to hang around until we get around to enshrining things in stronger laws and honestly look ourselves in the mirror and say, look, your eggs aren't even cheaper, dude. Like you traded your soul for cheaper eggs and you're not even getting that. Maybe you could try to use your brain the next time. So yeah.
It's been awful to watch from afar. And as I was chatting with an old friend of mine this week, I said, I don't think we should be pointing and laughing because we could find ourselves in a similar boat awfully fast. So I would say for everyone in every other country who's currently looking at America going, oh, that's disgraceful. Be careful. Your turn at the podium of shame could come. Well, we wish you nothing but the best. I'm glad you live in an area that seems like it's more progressive than not. But obviously, you do still have that same Supreme Court. You still have that same leader. You still have some of the things you have to deal with, which is not great.
Yeah.
Tim, I understand that way back in my old stomping grounds, you may be having an election soon also.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah.
Sounds like
sounds like another mistake to me if you ask me, but
Yeah, sounds like Ontario's going to the polls next month, so.
Is it official yet or no?
He's supposed to announce tomorrow, I think. So,
okay.
He wants to call a snap election because he thinks he's got the numbers, and he might be right.
You think so?
I really hope not, but I mean, what has his rival had a chance to do that's in, are they set
Who's his current rivals? I mean, who's his current rival?
It's Bonnie Crombie, right? She left, she was the mayor of Mississauga where I lived until she ran for the leadership of the provincial party, and but she's barely gotten her feet wet.
The one commercial we hear about her is that the whole thing about raising taxes, but Mayor McCallion didn't raise taxes, and I think bankrupted Mississauga, right?
She certainly did. She used, instead of raising taxes, our old mayor basically did nothing but sell off huge amounts of land and use that development taxation money for keeping the city afloat so that everyone could be like, what a great mayor she is. She's keeping the tax rate down. But she should have been doing at least small increases. Instead, she had no increases for a long time. But the bill comes due on that stuff. And so basically she left. Everyone was like, what a great, nice old lady. And her legacy is like, what a great utopia that she had for Mississauga. Well, no, she didn't. She basically kicked the can down the road. And then everyone could blame everyone else for what came after that, which is, how the heck are you supposed to be accountable for that? But that, in the time since she left office, my taxation went from like $4,000 a year for my big house in Mississauga to like $8,500 for my taxes. Plus they added a bunch of user fees. Plus they added, rainwater disposal tax. They added all these other things to make it even more expensive because she had basically sold every single scrap of land in the entire area to try and basically keep her self in power, and nothing was left but for people like Crombie to do but have to raise taxes in order to pay for things. So this is what happens when you have, and again, Hazel McCallion, she was a business person a long time ago, but she spent 40 years in politics. We talk about the dangers that somebody who doesn't know what the hell they're doing in politics or spends too much time in politics can do, and there's a pretty good example right there.
Anyway, I have a bunch of meetings in the morning, so I better sign off, and it's already tomorrow for you.
Certainly is. Going to be back here at this desk in a scant 7 and a bit hours. So,
how's the little pupster doing?
He is living his best life. So when we got down here, we found out that Pat and Peter's newly adopted dog as of October was in heat. And I said, well, should we keep them apart? And Pat said, well, if she happens to, get impregnated, that might actually be good because it would help us afford to pay for the surgery she needs to no longer have puppies anyways.
Right. Yeah.
So we kind of just let the dogs out, and boy, let me tell you, his first week in New Brunswick was going to make an impression.
It was great.
He just
memorable
is going to think of this as nothing but the greatest place on earth because as my beautiful little cousin said when I spoke to her a couple of days into being here, those two like to wrestle a lot. So, there was a lot of dog wrestling going on for that first week. That has now, she basically put an end to it. And according to my aunt and uncle, has been acting weird. So they're hoping that maybe she's a couple of months away from bringing some new Melvins into the world. Obviously, it was not our intent. And we can't sell them as anything other than farm dogs. Unfortunately, there's a good likelihood that that's happened. So, he's so happy. He's got room to roam. Even when I take him outside, I mean, it's been bloody cold here, like insanely cold. I know it's cold back in Ontario too, but it's been stupid cold here. So like when we get up in the morning or we go out for our last pee at night, like we're in and out in like a couple minutes because his paws and my face freeze. But
yeah,
before it hit that low point, I mean, we went for long walks out into the woods and into the fields and stuff like that. And he is just having his best life out here. So yeah.
Mm-hmm. I'm watching a trailer. I'm trying to. It's the guy from. Come on, what's the name of the movie? 28 Years Later. That looks so good.
Oh yeah, that's the third part of that, right?
Aaron Taylor Johnson, is that his name?
Yep.
Yeah, it looks pretty good. All right, well, let's sign off and say goodbye.
All right, talk to you next week, guys.
Talk to you later.
Okay,
right.
bye.
Yep.
Bye.